My guest today is E.J. Alagoa, Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Port Harcourt. Professor Alagoa is the author of numerous books and pamphlets, including The Small Brave City-State, A History of the Niger Delta, and The Practice of History in Africa, as well as many articles. Some of these writings required him to gather oral histories from dozens of informants in the Niger Delta, in addition to consulting primary source documents written by Europeans. A renowned educator, Professor Alagoa has shared his passion and his groundbreaking insights and methodologies with several generations of students, including many who went on to become respected historians and/or professors in their own right. And although he recently celebrated his 90th birthday, he continues to publish new and original scholarship. So, Prof, congrats on all your achievements and on reaching 90, and thank you so much for making yourself available today.
Thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you this. You've written that one of the defining moments of your primary school education was learning about the Akassa raid against the Royal Niger Company and the British government's subsequent reprisal attacks on Nembe. I imagine then that you think it's important for children to learn history from a young age. Can you say a bit about why you feel that way?
It's from my own life and development. I was born in a small village in the house of my maternal grandmother. And she was a herbalist and masseur. And our Christians came from all parts of the Niger Delta. And she also was very good at telling the stories of the past and even the myths and stories about the gods and so on. And it was that my fascination with her storytelling and the history that she told that I became committed. I've actually committed myself to history. And although when I went, my father who lived in Nembe, which is the headquarters of the Nembe people. I went to school, then went to a secondary school that continues to be the best in the eastern and southern part of Nigeria, Government College here. And then to University of Ibadan, which, as you may know, first university in Nigeria. Throughout that period, I was motivated by the by still the things that my grandmother had taught. So that was how I became entrenched in it. And eventually, and then at the University of Ibadan, I was taught history by I think it's virtually one of the first Nigerians who got PhD degrees in history in London. Professor DK. Have you heard of the name?
DK,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So DK was my teacher and mentor. And when I graduated from Ibadan, DK again took me and put me in the National Archives of Nigeria, which was also a creation of DK. But I kept telling him that what I want is to be a historian, not to be a civil servant. But I think it was a good thing that it put me in the National Archives, because I now learned, became an archivist. It sent me to the National Archives of the United States, Washington, D.C., for training. So that's where I learned to be an archivist. Came back to Nigeria, and then I became the founder, as it were, of one of the three offices of the National Archives of Nigeria at Enugu. So I became able to really build that place up and set it up as an archive, and then to Kaduna. And it was that DK again who sent me to Madison, Wisconsin to do my PhD under Jan Van Sina. I'm sure you knew Jan Van Sina.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So that's how I became a historian. So when I graduated in Wisconsin, I got a PhD in Wisconsin. So I came back to Nigeria and began to be a teacher in the University of Lagos. I moved back to University of Ibadan as a teacher. Came back to the University of Lagos, and finally to University of Port Harcourt, which is in the eastern in part of the Niger Delta, which is the area in which I've done maybe 90% of my research and original publications.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, so many I think insights come out of what you just shared. I mean, I think, for example, about the time that you spent in the National Archives, I imagine that had a profound impact on your methodologies, because your work is so involved in really pulling analysis out of old documents. That's very interesting. Outstanding.
Yeah.
I wonder if you would mind telling me about this concept that you've written about before, which is how our understanding of the present can make us more effective analysts of the past, and for that matter, how our understanding of the past can make us more effective analysts of the present.
Yes, a lot of these positions that I took, I derived from my direct contact with the traditional history and my conversations with the traditional rulers, the traditional historians. I got it all from these people, because I spent years visiting all different cultural unit groups in the Niger Delta, which is my area of concentration. The historians attended all their traditional festivals, listened to their all the traditional performances and talked with the rulers of, but it's more like the groups. I you know, and really listen to them, listen to performances, all traditional activities, festivals, so that whatever I've tried to derive my historical conclusions and from concrete evidence. In fact, you cannot, I'm sure, if you went to Wisconsin in their library, they still have the collection that I made out of Wisconsin, copies there. But of course, after coming back, I've done much more. But those materials, of course, here in Nigeria.
And those are audio recordings of interviews that you made?
Yes, the interviews I did for my PhD in Wisconsin. Those recordings copies are in Madison.
Yeah, and I want to ask you more about this practice of compiling tellings of oral traditions and oral histories. Well, a few questions about this. One is that your writings, and I'm thinking especially about a history of the Niger Delta here, your writings are full of conflicting accounts of past events where one person will tell you one thing and somebody else will record somebody telling a different version of the events. And frequently you're able to look at these conflicting versions and come to some kind of concrete conclusion. So I'm wondering, how can others emulate you in other historians, other thinkers emulate you in when they encounter different versions of events in navigating and analyzing them?
Yes. Are you aware of, as I told you, in Madison, the two professors that were most crucial well, the major one is the one I would say, Jan van Sinner. Do you know about his work?
I haven't read too much of his work. Yeah, if I'm honest, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because he has written the most influential works on oral tradition, and of course, it was under him that I worked for my PhD. But all the things that I've written are things that I've confirmed directly from the sources, the communities, the local historians, the rulers, the elders, right from the sources, the original sources, and from the communities and from the cultural sources. That's what I've done, and then I interpret them. I sort of interrogate them as deeply as I can get. I've not just taken something and put it down as a story.
And this process of interrogating your findings or interrogating the histories and traditions that you encounter, what does that entail for others who are interested in emulating your work?
What it means is if somebody tells me that their ancestors came from one part of the Niger Delta or another part of Nigeria and took this route to that place where they are telling that story. I will do my best to go to that other place also and get the account there. And I will compare the stories and analyze them in detail so that I will then sort of interpret them and say, yes, this is likely to be the truth of the matter. So I don't take anything that I obtain from my sources lightly, or just simply take it and accept it. I interrogate it every way, compare it with the, So I expect that from the thing that you read, you will agree that that's the type of thing I've done. I've reinterpreted them rigorously, comparing account from one place with account from the other place. And even within the same group, stories from elders, stories from younger people, stories from different groups, and so on, so that I have a fuller story and can interpret them as sources.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've really noticed that in your writing, that you'll even identify that these speakers were of a younger age group, and
yes,
they're making claims that are typical of people their age, even in other villages.
That's what I've tried to do. Wherever I go, I talk with the young people, listen to, and also from different genres, folk stories, songs, different proverbs, the different categories of traditions also.
Yeah, so that's another thing that I would love to get your thoughts on, actually. The political philosopher Felwine Sarr has written, and I'm sure you'll agree, that music is a form of archive. Drawing on your own research and drawing on your own knowledge, I wonder if you could reflect on that assessment of music being a type of archive, and for that matter, other cultural forms too. I mean, a masquerade, a proverb.
Oh, completely. I agree 100%. Wherever I go, I talk with listen to their music, even their masquerade performances. Yes, their proverbs. They a lot of their histories comes out in performances. in songs. Yes, all types of oral literary sources.
To give people maybe a little bit of a concrete sense of what we're talking about, I wonder, I've pulled a few proverbs from a collection of Nembe proverbs that you published in the 1980s. I wonder if I could share them. Let me share 2 or 3, and then you can give us sort of a deeper explanation of what's being said here.
Okay.
Yes. So the first one I'll share states that the reed bows its head to the flood.
That is something that Huxley teaches that you acknowledge the authority of those who are legitimate and proper leaders, rulers, family heads, and so on, that you should, as if you have bent your head for them and accept their legitimate authority. And actually, that's it. We are like a natural law. It's a very important proverb, and it's used very regularly in the communities. And of course, right from the environment, as we are on the river all the time, and when the flood comes, the reeds that are the river, the water will, the tide will, the river flows over things. And yeah, younger people, community, with respect, bow the head as it were to their elders. The community should do the same to their rulers or leaders, legitimate leaders. And it's even as a natural thing. That is the order of nature.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Wow. There's another proverb which says, an infertile dog does not reject the advances of any dog.
Well, the dog that doesn't go out and about, doesn't become pregnant to have babies. That is that, to have results, you must act and be available and be part of community and be active before you can derive the benefits that are available within the community. You have to participate. You have to be an active member of society to derive the benefits that accrue, come out of membership of the community.
Very interesting. still talking about your historical methodology, because we were just talking about looking at different social institutions, including music, including masquerade, including proverbs, as a way of analyzing a society and its history. In that vein, I want to ask, I think it can be a difficult task to distill a people's sense of historiography, because historiography often structures a society's key institutions in such fundamental ways. Would you talk about how one can derive historiographical insights in the process of studying a society?
Oh, yes. You've seen the book, A History of the Niger Delta.
Yes.
You see that I've divided the delta into different areas,
like geological zones.
Yeah, the zones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I've tried to go to each area myself and interview the rulers, elders, where they have associations. I see their masquerade perform, listen to their proverbs, songs, all of these things, so that I can give an account of them, that they themselves that are derived directly from them, and an account that they themselves, in which they can see themselves, how they have grown up, how they are related to surrounding communities, and how they have developed through time on the point at which these stories have been told. So I try to get into the culture as deeply as I can through listening to all the different types of traditions and customary beliefs and institutions. That's what I've tried. So anybody from any of these small groups will have that understanding of their own cultural history and how they are related to their neighbors. So it is that type of really going into the lives and history, thoughts, cultural institutions, and so on. It's things that make them who they are. That's the type of penetration that I try to do for each small group. And then all together, how they aggregate, how they run their lives, how they rule themselves, cultural development, relationship to neighbors, and the analysis of their stories about the gods, to really take them, every single group, seriously and in a great meditation as possible. Yeah, so that's what I try to do. Successfully, I believe in.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so. It's so interesting. I mean, it sounds like your informants really, you give them sort of a lot of agency in the process, right? It's not like you just talk to them once and then you take whatever you wrote down back and develop it into your own ideas. I mean, this is really a dialogue, it sounds like.
No. It definitely, that's what I always go there and stay with them. And the truth is that every little community also wants its history to be preserved. And they know that what I was doing was something good for them. And they always accepted that. And wherever I went, many of the places, they've never heard of me, and I didn't know anybody. I go there, and they would take me to the house of the chief, or the elder, and I become the guest of the community.
Wow.
And when I tell them what I'm doing, that I'm going around the Niger Delta to every community to do the same, I think I did not have any, they accepted me. And I became a member of their community for the period I stayed with each of the communities. And they would do dances, they would sing, they would tell their proverbs, they tell their stories. Of course, there are some that are, there's a community that says they didn't come from anywhere. Their founder dropped from the sky. And that's the story that they have been telling all the time. And their neighbors also seem to have accepted that particular community. They are the only group that in the Niger Delta that have a tradition like that. And they are accepted. And there are communities that then say, okay, that their founders came from that place. But what I've done in that particular case is not only have I talked with the priests, the elders, and the young people and so on, but I've carried out archaeological excavations in that place and find that indeed, in terms of age of settlement, they are among the oldest. So I've tried wherever I go, I listen to all groups, young, old, men, women, societies, and so on. Then also add to them these stories that other their neighbors tell about them, so on, and analyze and assess, and then put all of them together.
Amazing, amazing.
So, yeah, yes, we've done some archaeological excavations, and we produced a book, The History of the United States.
I also want to ask, yeah, sort of about this issue of interpreting traditions. Like you're saying about the tradition of somebody dropping from the sky. I also recall from that book that a lot of communities' traditions hold that there was a past fissure in the community where one community broke off from another and formed a new community, often following the improper distribution of meat, often after a dweeker hunt. I mean, sort of a couple questions. Why are there so many stories like this? And should we take them at face value? If we don't take them at face value, what should we make of them?
We don't take them as face value. All I interpret that to mean that hunting was something that they took seriously, but they probably don't remember their own traditions of migration. So that is a stereotypical story. That I think when I go to a place and ask them, and they have not been careful in remembering or their traditions, but they know that in a group of villages, this one is the older one, and people move from this to that, and they don't no longer remember the circumstances that it was this type of thing they would see. So that's the way I've interpreted this story of sharing of meat. Yes. So there are other stories like that when you don't remember, you can just use that to complete your story. But I don't believe that animal sharing of soup was the real thing that caused their spreading out and moving out of places. And so, yeah.
It's so interesting.
That's how I mean, yeah. No, I don't believe that it was always truly sharing of meat product.
Just out of curiosity, do you think that was ever the case even in one of these stories?
Now, you can see that I've also, as I've told you, made every effort to do some excavations. And I've been also assisted by one of my colleagues who's unfortunately no longer with us, Professor K. Williamson of the UK. She has studied the languages of the Delta, and she has developed the origins of the language from the Futajalon area. I said that the best speakers were from there. That there was this movement along the Niger from that area down into the Niger Delta, because she has compared its own language with all the other bigger communities in Nigeria, the Igbo, the Yoruba, Hausa, and so on, and the Ijaw of the Nigeria, completely unique. So different. But the original that is trace distinct to the gives them. So I've tried to use the insights that I can get from other sciences. I don't think you have read any of those theoretical papers on the methodology. You have not seen them.
No, I've read a few of your books and a few papers, but I'm not sure I saw the ones that you're mentioning.
So that's the sort of thing I've tried to do. That is, record the traditions in detail from all groups and their cultural institutions and so on. But I also tried to, in fact, I sent somebody to go and study and get a PhD in archaeology in order to come, so that we have actually done a few excavations. And then this lady, K. Williamson, came from the UK and stayed inside the Delta, studied the language, and really became very well known. And we have used our insights also to flesh out and hold these stories together.
Yeah, you mentioned in A History of the Niger Delta about some of the use of linguistic data, some of the use of archaeological findings to help further your analysis and interpretation of the oral traditions. It's very interesting. And I want to ask too, I mean, speaking of the Niger Delta area, you've written that Nembe is a matriarchal society. I want to ask, what does this status of being a matriarchal society mean to different members of that society? And also, if you could share some reflections based on personal experience, because I understand that you actually lived in an environment of a matriarchal society for part of your childhood.
Yes, yes. And, like taking my own case, for example, uh, my father was a chief in the headquarters in Nembe, but my mother was from Okboma, a smaller section of the Nembe group. So when my mother became pregnant, my father sent her to her mother. And I was born in the village of my grandmother. That is sort of, the idea is that my mother was my mother's family. That's where I actually belong. I belong. But eventually, of course, matriarchal societies are very complicated arrangements of bringing children up. And the community itself has, and of course, the influence of surrounding communities and we're the only people in Nigeria who have this system. So the influence of our neighbors and so on. And now it has been changed. It is gradually changed. And of course, the influence of the colonial authorities and Christianity. So the pressure so that the system has gradually broken down, and now it's completely changed. So that my father, at age 5, he now withdrew me from my grandmother and put me to school in his name. And that's what I'm having. And actually, at this moment now, the whole system has, that the patriarchal system is completely broken by the influence. So it has reversed, so that I'm now also a chief in my own father's family.
Sorry, you said on your father's side you became a chief, or on your mother's side?
Father's side. I've taken father's name and chieftains.
Oh.
But previously it was never a part of. I had to take from my grandmother's, my mother's. Wow. So at this moment now, the influence of Christianity, colonialism, whatever, and even internal pressures So it's no longer operating. That's completely been changed. It has become like every other Nigerian community where you do everything through your father. They're now a chief actually. The chief did say, they are in the name of my father. So that has changed.
And I want to ask you too, I mean, about your experience being a chief. Would you mind sharing what responsibilities that role entails for you?
It's like within the community, there are different chieftaincy houses. There are chieftaincies, and above them, the Amayana king, a council of chiefs under the king, sort of rules and runs the community. So, as it were, as a chief, I'm the sort of guardian of all that my father's family. So I sort of act and operate, or they look up to me for guidance. That whenever there's a community activity, the mind about the king also, of course, that's what we operate.
Now, I'd like to ask you a few questions on specifically on the theme of the transatlantic traffic in human beings, the transatlantic slave trade, which in part was conducted out of the Niger Delta. And so I'm sure that in your research, you came across a lot of information that was relevant to this trade. Just to begin, has your research into Niger Delta history made you aware of any major misconceptions that people today have about the transatlantic slave trade? And if so, would you mind naming those misconceptions and setting the record straight?
Yes. There was one misconception that was very serious within Nigeria. Of course, you know, Nigeria has been ruled for a long period by the military. And it was problems within the military that led to the Civil War. During the Civil War period, the Biafran group actually took over parts of the Niger Delta, including Nembe. And the Biafrans, some of their leaders, actually stated publicly that they were doing that because the Nembe and Niger Delta Izon people had carried Igbo people and sold them. which of course is a complete fallacy. Delta people, Nembe and the other communities who are in the Delta did not go to any of those places to carry the Igbo slaves. They were always bought. That is, any slaves that the Nembe chiefs, Kalabari chiefs, or Boni chiefs sold to the Europeans, well, they had actually also bought them from the Igbos. They did not go to any Igbo community to raid or seize Igbos. And after the abolition, we now didn't have Igbo people who have on their own left their places, come to Nembe and other Niger Delta states and become members of our communities. And they are spread all over the country again, right north to its limit. And they are of course very restless people. A whole lot of them are in the US, the UK. But the Nembe people, Kalabare and so on, did not raid any Nigerian community to take slaves and sell them.
So it was people who Igbos were enslaved by other Igbos, and then and then they were sold to Ijaw groups.
Yes, who then sold them. Yeah, and indeed, when the Nembe and Ijaw city-states, as we call them in Niger Delta, obtained slaves even after the slave trade. They came, some settled or were brought, and the system that we have in the Niger Delta absorbed them, and they become indistinguishable from any other person. And a lot of them even became chiefs in Nembe and other places, in other Delta states. And of course, King Jaja of Opobo.
Yes.
Yeah, complete Igbo man. He went to Boni. And the system is such that he then rose up, became very important, and led them out to another part of the Delta, and he became King Jaja. So that's the system in the Delta. Once you are part of it, a house, as we call them, a part of the community, you can be anything. If you are bright, you can become a chief. A whole lot of, in fact, that's the next paper I'm going to do is about that. Tracing the origins of chieftaincies, and we find that even in Nembe, a whole lot of houses are headed by Igbo people who came from Igbo land. But they have become such an integral part of the community that even some members of those families will not know that the founder of their house was actually an Igbo man.
Mm. Yeah, so this gets at something that I want to ask you about, because you had in Niger Delta societies in those old days, situations like what you're mentioning with King Jaja of Opobo, with other people in Nembe, where people started off as enslaved in that society, could sometimes become extremely wealthy, could even become chiefs or heads of state, as in the case of King Jaja of Opobo.
Yes.
While others were being sold to Europeans and trafficked across the Atlantic. So, I mean, I guess my question is, how did this institution operate? How did it distinguish of enslavement? How did this institution distinguish between people, where some would have the opportunity to improve their lot and contribute to the community, and then others didn't?
Yeah. Yeah, but because they made choices. If you are a chief in Nembe and you went up and brought 2, 3, 4, 5 slaves, you will know or can select the ones that you think are good, and you are going to sell the ones that have some bad character, are sickly, or whatever. Those are the ones you sell, trade. The others are integrated into the family, and they can become even rulers of that same house. Yeah.
Wow.
But that's the system that is now operating.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. And
yes, and you can, even the members of the houses do not know that the chief of their houses came from Igbo land. Because the integration is complete.
By which you mean they have like social institutions for integrating people into that society?
Integration was taken very seriously. That's the basis of the organization of the house system in Nembe, and all the other Delta states are the same. If you go to Bonny, go to Kalabari, the same, or Krika.
I also want to ask, I mean, this is maybe more of an abstract question, but from the perspective of Niger Delta participants in this commerce in human beings, this traffic in human beings, what would people have said was the purpose of this? And I ask because, I mean, on the one hand, I've heard the theory that people, there were communities really just supporting like lavish lifestyles. I've heard it posited that people were stockpiling arms and keeping sort of state militaries to prevent against other communities raiding them. which in turn led to kind of an over-militarization. I mean, what would you say was the purpose of the slave trade?
Well, the internal one was just simply to increase your manpower base. Like actually, I'm a chief. If I thought that maybe I don't have my own children, or I want my house to be bigger and have money. That was the way to increase the number of my family. You go to Igbo land, up to today, they are doing that. You go to Igbo land, and they are prepared to give you their daughters and so on, and you bring them and increase your population of your group. That's what the Niger Delta committees did, and are still doing.
And so it was like to see if I understand, like that they would be not in competition with each other, but to stay strong relative to the neighboring states.
Yes. And before one of the reason in the earlier periods was if a chief was in business and trade, and he was making a lot of profit with doing not by slave trade, but by palm oil trade, whatever. Because they wait to, as it were, where there are no banks. The profit that you make out of the palm oil trade, you cannot dig a well and put it all. So slaves from Igbo land was one way of saving putting your money. So number of women or men, and you increase your following.
Wow. So people were storing capital basically in the form of other people.
Yes. That was
wow.
Where you put your profit in. You have no bank to put it.
Wow.
Yeah. You become rich, you acquire slaves who are fully integrated, so that at the moment, some of them have become chiefs. They become chiefs. And there's no difference between them and those who are originally Nembe, Kabara, whatever. They become 100% part of the community.
So these people who the houses were trying to accumulate, they would enter the community, or they would enter the house enslaved, but with the social mobility, the potential to move up to a higher social station.
Completely. Once they are in, they have accepted 100%. They can begin to do whatever. They become rich. They are very bright, and they can then be chosen as chiefs.
Wow. Yeah. And for those people, I mean, especially let's say people in the United States or elsewhere in the Americas, who are interested in uncovering more details about people who were trafficked across the Atlantic, who they were, what their lives were like, etc. What do you think is the most productive way, or are the most productive methodologies for going about this research?
Well, I've not actually.
And maybe I should clarify, researching what their lives were like on the African continent, not after departure.
No, not in America.
Not in America, but
in fact,
before leaving Africa, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I've just decided just now to take up this matter and look at the dynamics of this Igbo people brought in to Niger Delta states and rising up to the chiefs. I plan to do a paper on it.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
Yes. Yes. I've really only recently thought of it.
Outstanding. Wow. Wow. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yes, it occurred to me as something that needs recording, because the community, once the person has come in and completely integrated, nobody, bothers about this man is Igbo, but it's now a chief in Nembe, and that's it. 100% assimilated. I want to study particular case studies.
That would be fascinating. I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that paper.
Yes, God willing, I will do a paper on that. Because it really, I even myself, I just recently came to look at my own group in Nembe, and then just discovered that then chieftaincies had titles and so on, that the people were really from Igbo land. But once they are assimilated and part of it, within the generation, where they came from, they are completely Nembe. The assimilation is 100%.
It's fascinating. I want to ask one more question that's related to this topic. How can we productively or most productively engage with historical sources that clearly refer to enslaved people, but that are narrativized in such a way to deny those people the status of actor or the status of agent. And I'm thinking about, for example, the Diary of Antera Duke, who is an Afik man, not from Nembe, but where in his writing he'll refer to this many people were sold to the Europeans today. But what can you take away from those kinds of sources where you can actually learn something about the people who were sold?
Well, the thing that interests Nigerian historians about those is they use their histories to learn about the European attitude to the people they bought. That is what they did. And these are people who took members of these communities away and sort of treated them as non-human. I'm telling you, in Nembe, I myself did not realize that in chieftaincy positions, the holders were Igbo. Once they have been accepted, adopted, and so on, they can be kings, they're ruler, whatever. But the European and American case was that the reverse, that Black people are still stigmatized, they're still inferior, and so on, the opposite. That's what I see.
Yeah, I want to go back to something that we were talking about before. When we were talking about the slave trade and Igbo people being accepted into Nembe society, even into positions of power.
Okay, yes.
You mentioned that it still happens today. So I was wondering what are the processes by which it happens today?
It still goes on. But this time, between the Niger Delta communities than with the Bibio communities. Do you have an idea of the Bibio of Nigeria? You know them. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yes.
Yeah. More between the Niger Delta communities and those areas, and much less with the Igbo communities. And what they do is somebody, mostly male from Niger Delta communities, will go into a Bimbio area and marry from a family in the Bimbio area. With a full understanding is that the lady they're getting out is gone and will become a member of the Niger Delta community, and there will be no return. That is what is going on. Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much. Well, yeah, the remaining questions that I have are sort of miscellaneous. Some of them are about you. Some of them are about your opinions. So I'll just kind of fire them off, and you can answer them in whatever way feels appropriate to you. One is, I want to ask what it was like working in your country while there was a war going on, and in many cases working quite close to conflict zones.
I really didn't feel any anxiety at all, because even when the war was going on, the Nembe people who were in the direct war zone were able to do business outside, because the Niger Delta is their home, and they are masters of the routes, waterways, and the Biafrans who were in occupation of these areas really, when they really couldn't master the Delta. So people were moving between the areas. And I was in Ibadan, I think, at that time. But I was able to receive messages, receive guests coming out of the war area to some point, and then I would go and pick them up. And in some cases, I was actually going out myself in the areas very close to the war areas. And I didn't feel any anxiety at all. So in the Niger Delta, the Niger Delta people really are always in control.
So in those instances, were you traveling by canoe? I mean, how were you getting around?
By canoes that were powered by engine-powered canoes. Yes.
And because of your confidence in people's ability to navigate the waterways without being discovered, you had no fears of working so close to a conflict zone.
Yes, yes. They know the routes, the communities, and I had no anxieties at all. And I didn't encounter any emergency situations at all throughout the period.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You cite your grandmother, and you've mentioned her earlier in the interview, as being a major formative influence on your personality. I wonder if there are any particular memories or moments that stand out to you about her or involving her.
Oh, yeah, she was a very kind person, and she I think I already told you, she had never, throughout the period I've lived with her, and after I left her and went to school, and came back on holidays to see her, never raised her voice, never took objection to whatever people said or did. He would endure, the misconduct of other people, and just did what she believed was good. That's the type of person she was. And her memory, I have a full memory as I'm talking now. Never raised her voice. Just a wonderful person.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
And that was all we have on our website a group we call a name after her, and going through several generations. But if I spell the name, maybe you could pick it up.
Yes, that would be great.
Tuamain. 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 Tuamain descendants.
Oh, great.
That's the group.
Okay, so I'm sure if somebody types that into Google, they can pull up the site and see more information.
I think so.
That's great. Thank you so much for that.
All right.
You co-authored a book on Enist Cisse Ecoli that I believe was published just this year. What advice do you have for people to stay productive once they become advanced in years?
It's you have to remain healthy and focused. And health is very important, of course. You have to be healthy to engage in, continue to be active. And fortunately, as I was growing older, before I left service, I had diabetes. It was very troublesome for some time. But I've been able now to control it 100% by diet. I've reduced my dietary intake drastically, and I'm no longer. I'm free of of any problem with diabetes. I think I'm in terms of health, I'm much better now at 90 than when I was younger.
Amazing. And that gives you
the only problem is...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I have problems with memory. Sometimes I forget things a lot now. But I'm healthy. I don't feel sick because I've reduced my dietary intake drastically.
That's wonderful. That's
although much, much more forgetful now.
mm,
But I'm okay.
yeah, yeah. And somehow you managed to keep working. I mean, even in spite of memory issues. So it's
I keep working. Yeah,
it's
I keep
fantastic.
working. Mhm.
Um, let's see. You've written extensively about the importance of oral traditions, and you've also made the criticism, this was some decades ago that you were writing, that not enough is done in academia and beyond to support the continued relevance of oral forms. How would you appraise the state of orality and of oral tradition today? And perhaps you'd like to address this question separately, or you can address them together. But how do you see orality being affected by modern communications technologies, things like the internet, things like Zoom, which we're using right now, and WhatsApp, things of that nature?
Uh, oh, those things uh, in some ways can also be used to promote the uh, the reach of the oral tradition. Uh, what I see in the new religious uh, groups and this evangelical movement has really actually taken over the areas of activity within many communities. And that's what is happening.
Mm.
And the young people are moving out into new cultural forms of expression, like in music. They are more sort of attuned to new forms. They create new forms of expression. But I expect that even within those ones, in some areas, like among the Yoruba, the big Yoruba group of Western Nigeria, they still sort of in their music, in their own special forms of drama and television programs and so on. They are still promoting their culture using their languages and deriving, creating new forms of art within the oral traditional forms. So it's not completely gone. It's still alive in some of these communities. But there are other communities within Nigeria where the oral forms are disappearing.
Finally, my closing question. I wonder if you would mind sharing your thoughts on contemporary separatist movements in Nigeria.
Yeah. Separatist they really, at the present time, what we find is that some of the bigger groups, the ones that hold the power, are trying to suppress minority within their geographical areas by seizing their land, driving them out of their homes, and trying to destroy them. But they are also resilient and depending on who is president. The new Nigerian government, for example, is one that I can see will protect every group. So it's sort of, things are not perfect, but the system will work to defend the lives of groups that are under attack.
Well, Professor E.J. Alagoa, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. It's been an absolute privilege getting to talk to you.
Thank you.